At the end of Tuesday's January 6 House Committee hearing, Vice Chairwoman Liz Cheney said there is new evidence. Former President Trump attempted to contact one of the witnesses cooperating with the panel. The committee has alerted the Justice Department.
After our last hearing, President Trump tried to call a witness in our investigation, a witness you have not yet seen in these hearings. That person declined to answer or respond to President Trump's call and instead alerted their lawyer to the call. Their lawyer alerted us.
CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now. Scott, good to have you up at the Capitol. As ever, earlier today, the chairman of the January 6th committee, Benny Thompson, he addressed the former president's alleged attempt to contact a witness. As you've been roaming around the Capitol, talking to your sources, what have you learned about what the committee knows?
According to the chairman, who spoke with reporters late today, Bob, there was no voicemail left in that phone call from Donald Trump to this witness, at least as far as the chairman knows, he says. What's more, he made clear they haven't made one of those official referrals for prosecution to the Justice Department, which Congress has done in the past. He says he just made them aware that the committee believes Donald Trump tried to call a witness who is yet to be made publicly known by the committee, and that witness didn't take the call, but instead forwarded information about the call on to his or her lawyer, who ultimately notified the committee, who has now ultimately notified the Department of Justice. We've been calling the Department of Justice for comment. They won't give comment, nor do we expect them to. They rarely, if ever, comment on investigations that have not been announced or opened officially or closed officially. But this is obviously a concern, and a growing concern for the committee, Bob. This is just the latest example that they've announced of alleged witness tampering, interference, or phone calls of questionable content.
A lot of open questions about that, lingering questions. Who was he calling? Why was he calling? We don't have those answers. But we do know, Scott, that the January 6th committee will hold its next hearing, prime time, next Thursday night. What do you expect?
Committee members are telling me this could be their finale. It could be their valedictory. It'll happen in prime time, and the committee members are now coalescing around a focus, saying it'll be what they characterize as dereliction of duty. What Donald Trump said, what he didn't say, what he did, what he didn't do during the 3 hours in which violence was at its peak here on the Capitol grounds, January 6th. So it feels like it'll be channeled and focused very specifically, like a fine point, on former President Trump, his actions or inactions. It'll be led, I'm told, by Virginia Democrat Elaine Luria, the one member of this committee we have not seen present at one of the public hearings, and Illinois Congressman, the Republican Adam Kinzinger. That's the last announced hearing, but Chairman Thompson told reporters late today he won't rule out more hearings, and there's a fundamental reason for that, Bob. As you know as well as anybody, they're doing intake still, even as they present their findings. They're still digesting and seeking new interviews, so they're not ruling out the possibility of more hearings later this summer, even early this fall.
Scott, former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon is once again this week trying to delay his contempt of Congress trial, this time from July 18th to mid-October. What's the Bannon argument, and is there any chance of a delay?
Interesting question, because he tried this already and failed yesterday in court. He's been seeking to delay his trial, citing, among many other reasons, the prominence of his name in the January 6th committee public hearings. He has called it potentially inflammatory and a potential agent of bias against the Washington, D.C. jurors who would sit for his trial. He renewed that argument today, saying he was mentioned again in yesterday's hearing, that the committee showed that clip of his podcast from January 5th, 2021, in which he said famously he expected all hell to break loose on January 6th. So he has renewed and to a degree amplified an argument that has already failed in court. It is quite clear he does not want to go on trial Monday. He wants to push it back at least till mid-October. He's back in court. At least his case is back in court tomorrow, 10 a.m. Washington, D.C. time. We'll see, Bob, if the argument has any more success this time.
Scott, you've done extensive reporting on people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, the insurrection efforts. David Blair of Maryland was sentenced to 5 months in prison for his involvement in the Capitol riot. What do you know about his case and where it stands?
His case is a unicorn. It is unlike any other. First of all, he's accused of and acknowledged bringing a Confederate flag attached to a lacrosse stick along with a knife to the Capitol January 6th. And during proceedings today, it was acknowledged by his defense lawyer, kind of cross-checked a police officer, made contact with the lacrosse stick. Not the first person accused of bringing a Confederate flag, not the first person accused of making contact with police, certainly. David Blair, while asking for leniency today from the federal judge, says he wasn't here January 6th to protest the election. He was here, he said, because he was protesting, in his words, the erasing of history and the toppling of Confederate statues. So this 27-year-old man from Maryland who lives with his parents at home brought a Confederate flag to the Capitol that day for that reason. Showing again, there's so much we still don't know about who was in this crowd January 6th and why. The judge says, before sentencing David Blair to 5 months in prison for his guilty plea in January 6th, that it was clear David Blair came here ready for a fight and looking for one. He brought a knife, brought a Confederate flag in the year 2021 outside the U.S. Capitol.
Meanwhile, Scott, protesters, including people affected by the shootings in Highland Park, Illinois, and Uvalde, Texas, they've been rallying for gun control at the Capitol this week. What do they want to see from Congress, especially after Congress just passed a bipartisan piece of gun legislation?
I spent some time at that rally today. It was a mixture of families from the Highland Park, Illinois community and the Uvalde, Texas community. The Highland Park shooting July 4th, the Uvalde, Texas shooting 50 days ago, wearing those orange shirts, carrying those orange signs, calling unequivocally for a federal assault weapons ban. Doing so outside a U.S. Capitol in which Congress was in session, a Congress that just recently passed a much more incremental change to gun laws, expanding access to red flag laws through which courts can order guns seized from people deemed dangerous, background checks for those under the age of 21, much more incremental changes. It's an indication of the political reality for those who voted in favor of that bill and the Biden administration that just days later, there is a restive group of gun control activists who say the Congress and the administration need to go much further. Bob.
Scott MacFarlane, thank you as always.